185milessouth.com.
Smash that Patreon button.
185 Miles South, a hardcore punk rock podcast.
Just be here in the first place. In presence, just from the face. Don't want it, so take it back. Or you won't like how I'll send it back. In a body bag, body bag, body bag. Don't be connected, the fucking face. 'Cause it won't blow up.
What's up, everyone? We are back and talking hardcore. I am Zach Nelson, and helping out, it is the king of the windmill. It is Kevin Hare. What's up, dude?
What up?
What up? What up? All right. We were going to do this episode the week after we did the 2010 Super 7, and so I was going to get your Super 7, but I got the worst fucking flu. So I ran the Al Baril episode, which was totally sick. If you guys haven't listened to it, go check it out. We get into all early Boston, and dude, Al Baril, serious living legend. So check that out. But 2010 Super 7, dude. Kevin, what do you got?
All right, so I went through, and 2010 was a weird year where it was like a real transitionary year of like all this stuff was bubbling, but like the next year or two, it was either kind of in between or like stuff was bubbling next. But what I got is World Burns to Death, Babylon Indoors, which is on their split with Slang. I believe it's the last World Burns to Death recorded song. It's like kind of metally, but with like the, you know, the crusty, stadium crusty type of stuff or whatever. It's awesome. If they did a full LP like at the end, I think it would be unbelievable, but that's just a kind of a what if. Boston Strangler, The Truth, which I honestly forgot was on the demo because I'm so used to it on Fire, but it's on the demo, and I think that it's an all-time song. Rival Mob, Hardcore for Hardcore, which same tip, it's all-time song from Boston. Terror Keepers of the Faith, which is just an undeniable hardcore classic song. Bitter End Disguised, which I think is better than everything that's on the LP. It's on the Triple B comp. I don't think it's like the Bitter End song like I hear some people say, but I do think that it is an awesome song. Stick Together, which in this area, Stick Together was a huge band for kind of bringing back the youth crew style, the Roots type of style, and they were huge around here. So that was from their demo. And then the last one that I have is Eccentricine, which I've seen written a million times, but I don't say it too often, by Blacklisted, which is on their EP that came out that year, which doesn't sound like a Blacklisted song. It sounds kind of like Texas is the Reason or Dinosaur Jr. or something, but I do really like it. I didn't really think about it until I listened to the episode where you were talking about give and praise and stuff like that. And the Blacklisted thing record is kind of like their version of doing that. It's a little darker, just even in general, just their direction. Then it's a little darker than those other bands, but it's still kind of the same thing of like growing. I don't want to say out of hardcore, but kind of evolving into whatever the next step that they were going to do be after being involved for a while. So that is my Super 7 for 2010.
All right, let's get into some newish stuff.
The Lowdown.
Here's what we got for the last, Jesus, it's been 6 weeks since the last episode, but we just want to say the Life Destruct Split 12-inch is now up on streaming. It's one of the best records of last year, so everyone check it out on Spotify. The band Mongrel out of San Diego, they put out a new EP on Days and Hard to Lower Records called Baptized in the Gutter. It came out last Friday. This is San Diego's hardest band, so check it out. They are a force to be reckoned with live. So if you haven't seen Mongrel handle business, you know what to do. The band Grand Scheme out of Washington, D.C. put out a self-titled EP on 11 PM Records.
Once, long ago, there was hardcore, and it was good. Since then, we've largely had to settle for pale imitation. But at occasional intervals, in different places around the world, small groups of attentive, motivated people have come together and made music that does justice to hardcore, as it was when it mattered.
Dude, this thing is so good. It was an insta-cop for me. It is not on Spotify at the time that we're recording this, or we would have been talking it, but it is an early possible EP of the year contender. It is so good. The band Intermission out of San Diego put out a 12-inch called Power Corrupts on Smoking Room. It's punk/post-punk. It's super good. Check it out. There is a playlist for every episode, 185milessouth.com. Click that playlist link at the top of the page, or just find us on Spotify. Let's see here. Identity Shock put out the Traces EP on Designated Mosher's Unit. I already got it in the mail. It is packed thick. This thing rules, dude. Super stoked on it. The band Lead Spirit put out a self-titled EP on From Within Records. Check that out. The Sissy Boys put out the Winter Promo 24. I think it came out in January, but 24, maybe it came out in December. A band called Triflin, sick-ass name, put out a Promo 25. Check that out. Silenced put out a self-titled Lave 10-inch on Indecision Records. Young band out of OC. I saw them at Program. They were pretty sick. A band called Default Aggression put out an EP called Backed Into a Corner. Posy Chris loved this one. It was singing the praises, so check that out. The band Bare Minimum put out a 12-inch EP called Two Betrayals on Room 11 Records. You can order that now. I believe it's shipping. This is out of Oxnard, California. It's a little more on the beatdown tip, but it kept my interest. I ordered it. I can't wait for mine to come in the mail. A band called Will to Speak put out a 12-inch on From Within Records in October 2024. I just want to note this because I totally missed it. And I think maybe the LP's shipped and I saw a post about it and I checked it out. And dude, I liked it a lot. So Will to Speak, hell yeah. A band called No Known Witnesses put out Demo 2025. This is out of Glasgow. Check it out. A band called Flat 6 put out The Demo on Delayed Gratification. Check it out. Evil Mind put out their 2025 EP in Roman numerals. Nice touch, dude. A band called First Attack put out On the Other Side / Enough 7-inch on Mendeku Discac / Longshot Records. This is a cold oi band out of Vancouver. So if you like that Froy shit we're always talking about, check out First Attack. A band called Pseudo Youth put out an LP called Nobody Gets Down Like, and it came out on Going Underground Records. Dude, they spell pseudo tsunami style, so that is ill. The singing is super unique. Yeah, when it hits, it hits. Check out the song on the playlist. I love it. The whole LP, it's a little hit or miss for me, but like I said, when it hits good. A band called First in Line out of Sweden put out an LP called Connect the Dots. It came out on Lovely Records. This is an old school band, dude. They started as a band called Prehistoric in 1988. And I sent this through to Kevin, or Kevin sent it through to me. And we were like, what the fuck, dude? This is so good. What were your thoughts on this one, Kevin?
Dude, when I first heard a song from it, it kind of sounded like Kill Your Idol, Striking Distance. And you sent me a playlist and I accidentally played it. Like, I was going to listen to it, but I accidentally hit one of the songs. And I was just like, oh my God, what is this? It kind of a throwback to like straightforward, like I said, Kill Your Idols type of stuff. I think it maybe gets a little too long, but that initial like first 10, 15 minutes is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a long record, very Euro in that way, but like, dude, it kicks ass. And like, for them to be vets and come back and do something this hard, like, it's not like fucking Bob 47 putting out like one of the greatest LPs of last year or anything, but it is pretty sick, dude, that some dudes that have been around for a minute came back and put out an LP this good. So check it out. Okay, a band called Said and Done put out their Demo 2025. This is a straight edge hardcore band out of the 805, so much respect. A band called Eliminators put out their 2025 demo. This is a band comprised of Bay Area scene veterans. Good ass demo. Check it out. Stigma. Dice Throw out of Austria put out their EP Calculate Calamity. It's really good. Rob Moran picked it up for me when Unbroken was over there. I think the dude from this band did the scene report for Austria in the 185 miles south of somewhere fanzine. So check that out. A band called Ballistics out of New Jersey. They put out their EP called Staring Down the Barrel. They got a song called CEO Assassination Squad on it. So hell yeah, what's up? A band called Compete put out their demo 2025. Check it out. Resurrection out of Orange County, California put out a demo. Dude, change your name. What are you doing? But this demo is pretty good. Wretched Right put out a demo cassette on Rebirth Records. It's like a metal record, but it kept my interest. What do you think about this one, Kevin?
Yeah, this band is awesome. It's members of a lot of other bands that are currently going right now. The singer is in Warren, but like it's really heavy. It's kind of like, it's not like All Out War or anything, but it's kind of in that realm where it doesn't, I don't think the toothpaste is out of the tube with it, where it like tries too hard to be a metal record. It's kind of like Fatal Realm in that way, where like it straddles both lines really perfectly.
Yeah. This could be like if Fatal Realm and Wretched Right did like a split 12-inch, it could be like the Faith Void split 12-inch of like of like death metal-esque hardcore. It's sick, dude. I think in the write-up, Bob wrote that it was like 1989 earache, maybe 89 to 92 earache records. I think that was a great call out. So, okay, a band Tripwire out of Washington, D.C. put out their demo, Power Violence demo. It is not on streaming, but look up Tripwire. This was a sick-ass demo that I believe Kevin sent through. A band called Disguised put out their winter promo on Rebirth Records. Dude, Rebirth Records, don't miss. What's up? True Fraud put out their demo 2025. And lastly, Split System just put out a new 7-inch called On the Edge and On the Loose. So it's 2 songs, On the Edge, On the Loose. Both kick ass. Hell yeah, I hope Split System comes back to America in 2025. Okay, couple reissues I wanted to talk. Sorry State put out a lost LP by the band Subculture. It is called Fred. It is a band from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Yeah, it sounds like 1986 hardcore punk in the way that, you know, like they're listening to crossover, but it doesn't cross over enough to sound metal. You know, they are from the state that COC is in. Maybe if you mash up RKL and the first Crumbsuckers LP, you get something that sounds like this. Like they have lots of chops, but they're not playing metal. It's funny, dude. So I was trying to Google this because like I was too lazy to pull it out of my record collection. And I was pulling it up and I instead of Subculture Fred, I typed in Sub Society Dave. So what the fuck? So, hey, if anyone needs a band name and an album name, Sub Society Dave, what's going on? Okay, the band Apocalypse got re-released by Prank Records. This is a band that came out in between the eras of the band Crow in the late 80s. So I believe Crow started in Osaka and then they moved to Tokyo or vice versa. And this was the band in between. Kevin, what did you think about this one?
So I got this a few years ago when it was kind of unearthed and re-released for the first time. And this record is just really crazy. It starts with like a 10-minute long vocal test type of song of just like the most haunted screaming just over and over for 10 minutes. And it ends with like a song in which he is using like a fake high-pitched voice the whole time. And then in between is like, it kind of varies from some songs that sound like Flipper to some more straightforward late 80s Japanese stuff. It's a record that like, I can't tell you that it is like the greatest record of all time because I do like it, but like, it's not, I don't listen to it for that. It's just so crazy and weird, like a band just kind of completely going for it in a way that like I can't really even process trying to go for it. Like I can't understand like coming up with the ideas that they did of like, yeah, let's just scream for 10 minutes, you know, and it kind of works. So that's where like I can't say that everybody should go buy this to like because it's this greatest like lost Japanese hardcore record, but I do think that it's one of these things that's absolutely worth checking out just because it is so interesting and kind of creative and different that it's just that's what makes it worthy for me.
I think it's the time to check it out now too. Like it's like a cold weather record, right? Like if you're on a long drive somewhere really cold, you got the windows up and you're still feeling cold, like blast this record and see what it's all about. You know, this record sounds like what Gas Tunk looks like. You know, you like see a picture of Gas Tunk the first time, you're like, what the fuck? What does this band sound like? Like, and this is what I would picture it sounds like, you know?
Yeah.
Totally wild. Okay, the last thing on the reissues, the label Poison Well Records out of Ventura. They put out Dr. No live at CBGB in 1989. They sent me a copy. Much respect. Dude, I love stuff like this. This is like an authorized bootleg or whatever, but super sick. Okay. All right, the first thing that we're going to dive into is the LP Nightmare Agitators by the band The Massacred out of Boston, Massachusetts. This came out on Active 8 Records digitally on January 21st, 2025. Although I saw them, I believe, last November in San Diego, and they had LPs in hand. So I bought it back then. But yeah, we've been jamming it all year. Kevin, you love this one. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think so. We talked about their 7-inch last year quite a bit. That it would kind of hit the in between, kind of a good raging hardcore record and the punk type of record, and it had really crisp, big production. And I think that this is a really good follow up to that. I think first, to kind of address some of the differences and the small negatives, is that I think that the production on the last 7-inch I might have liked a little bit more, especially the vocals. I think they're a little buried this time. And I do think that the last one was a little bit catchier and maybe a little more anthemic. But also at the same time, this is a full record now, and I think it's 25 minutes long. So it's, for a punk record, that's pretty long, right? Most records these days are like between 15 and 20 minutes. So I do think that they do a really good job of just kind of switching it up. Some of the songs are a little slower. Like, it starts with the first two songs, especially the first one, which is kind of the anthem of that's called Massacred. It starts, and then it kind of it goes up and down a lot, where the second song, The Gash, it kind of has that mid-tempo starts, and then it gets faster. But then throughout, it goes into some mid-tempo songs. I know there's some, there's a stretch of a few mid-tempo songs on it that kind of varied up a little bit. But to me, it doesn't get boring, or even those songs, I think they all work together. And then the last song, Extermination, is another mid-tempo one, and I think that I think it's definitely the best song on the record, and it might be the best song that they've done. So, yeah, I was really excited for this one, almost to the point of building it up in my head too much. And the first time or two I listened to it, I was just like, okay, I think that this is good, but is this as good as the last records? And then I've listened to it more and more, and I think that it definitely is. I've listened to it quite a bit. I don't know for sure if it's going to be on my year-end list, but I think that there's a really good chance that I will be coming back to this at the end of the year.
It's hard to beat that last 7-inch. It's the more I listen to it, especially up against other modern things, it's just kind of unbeatable. That 3-song run on the Death March EP of Schizophrenic Insanity, Brain Warfare, the mid-tempo banger, and then Death March, to be so raw and so catchy, how the fuck did they do that? You know what I mean? And so I think they set the bar too high that they're not going to be able to touch that run of songs, and no one else is this year either. You know what I mean? But I think this is a sick ass LP. And 25 minutes is way too long for me generally, but I've listened to this thing a ton of times. There's only one song I'd cut, you know what I mean? And it's only 2 minutes. So if you think about that, it's damn, I'm still getting down with this 23-minute LP. Just to give people, if they didn't listen to when we talked about this band before, this band, they play a UK 82 style of hardcore punk. Maybe think a less sing-songy Exploited or Partisans, mixed with a mid-era Verukers, mixed with maybe Restitute from Finland, the era of Schizophrenia, the second LP. I do think this recording sounds great. You're right. It might be a little more monotone in the vocals. I don't know if they're buried, but it still sounds sick. I think the record overall sounds great. Now, what they do, because they're doing the LP, they're okay, we can do some slower and some mid-tempo songs. And I think, if you listen to that first Chaos UK LP, they put the 2 slow songs back to back, The End Is Nigh and Victimized. And that does make that record drag a little bit in the middle. And I think that this one kind of does too. And I think they could have gotten away with it if they just yanked Postmortem too, because like Nightmare Agitators is a good ass slow song. Postmortem 2 is pretty mid. And then they do a fast song. And then they do that Power on Top of Power, which is like the slow and then fast song. And that's super good. And then also like that Lion Ambush that has like a pretty long, slow intro. So there's a lot of like slow and mid tempo on this record. But then like Kev said, like the coup de grace on this thing is like that last song, Extermination, is so great. This is another like mid tempo song. That riff is like so catchy. It's like one of those things where the first time you hear it, you're like, have I heard this before? Is this a cover song? And kind of that first song, Massacred, is like that too. When like they do those ring outs on the cymbals, like da 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 da. It sounds so familiar. Like, dude, I know I've heard this before, but it's just a fucking dope ass band like writing a modern classic. You know what I mean? And like that's what this Extermination song is. Like it sounded so familiar to me. It sounds a little bit like the first song off that Finnish band Kuluit Cat, their 1985 7-inch. And then it kind of reminded me a little bit of Drugs Party and 526, the GBH song, but it's not. It's like again, it's like a band writing a modern classic. So, hey, I love this LP. I do think it slows down maybe a little too much in the middle, but they wrote a hardcore punk LP that is pretty fucking awesome, and they should be commended for it. They're really not missing 2 EPs and now an LP. This is one of the best hardcore punk bands in the world. So that's what's up. Anything else on this, Kev?
Yeah, the one last thing that I forgot to mention was the song Nightmare Agitators, like you said, is fucking awesome. And that part, the like, they slaughter with no remorse, is so cool. Yeah. And like, you'll just get that in your head over and over. Like, I think that that's the most like recognizable part of the record. It's just great. And they do a weird little tempo change after the first time that you don't really see coming too. So I think that that's pretty interesting as well. So yeah, this record is great. That's all I got on it.
All right, let's talk the band Dead on Your Feet. They put out their self-titled demo in January on Fortress Records. This is a band out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So what's up, Kevin? The home team right here.
Yeah, so this band is members of Envision and Scarab, Vinyl Resting Place, Gridiron, a bunch of other bands. But they've been talking about doing this one for a while, just a kind of a more straightforward, pissed off, early 2000s style straight edge band. And I think they really nailed it with this one. I think that it's great. It's one of those things where you can absolutely see the reference points, right? Like they're trying to sound like a band like Carry On, or I hear some Count Me Out, or I hear some Frostbite in it, right? But like to me, it doesn't really sound exactly like any of those bands. It kind of stands on its own as not just being a ripoff. Where Alfredo, who also sings in Envision, like I said, I think that his vocals really fit a type of band like this, where Envision is a little bit slower, and you know they got some medley parts now too, where this is just real straightforward, fast with hard mosh part hardcore. And that's, you know, that's really, I think that that's really the bread and butter of like what a good hardcore band is. If you just have good fast parts and good hard mosh parts, that's all that there is, right? So like the first song, I think that is like, it's the best song on the record, What's Real. And I think that it just kind of, it starts right away with vocals, and then, like I said, a good mosh part, but the whole thing doesn't let up. And I think that it really, I'm really glad to see a lot of new, just like in the middle hardcore bands. We talked about this before, but like there are so many that are just coming out all the time now, where like, I don't think at all that the heavy, like every band is heavy now, or like is hardcore back. Like I think that it is very, very clear that everything has shifted now, and that we're a little bit back in the normal, or sorry, in the middle. Like I said, it may not be exactly the same way as you think in your head, but I think that it's undeniable when you have bands like this coming out like all the time. But this band is awesome. I can't wait to see what they do more. They have a weekend with Wretched Right coming out up on the East Coast in March. So that should all be pretty awesome.
It's just sick because the backbone of this band is fast, right? Like, and the songs are short. There's only one song that breaks the 2-minute mark, but everything else is like, you know, in the minute to minute 30 range. This is like, what's up, dude? Hardcore 2025. Like, a band coming out the gate with a demo that sounds this good, writing this quality of material, like you really can't fuck around. You know what I mean? Like shout out to Carlos from No Echo for like maintaining that playlist of like all the new stuff, you know, that comes out. But like, if you go down that playlist, it's like, God damn, most of the shit sucks. You know what I mean? Like a lot of bands suck, you know, and like there's bands like this that are coming out and putting out like good shit out the gate. And it's like, they're setting the bar so high. Or think about like that No Idols demo from last year. It's like the bar is set so high. Or even like the next thing we're going to talk about here, the Who Remembers demo is like so sick in its own way. Like they're setting the bar so high. So yeah, the main thing I take away from this is like the brevity. The recording sounds huge. I love how they mix the fast beats. Like they do the scissor beat on Against Myself. Sounds a little American Nightmare-y in parts, a little early Blacklisted in parts. And like Kev said, calling out Carry On, calling out Frostbite. It's that early 2000s stuff. And like, hey, I'm not mad at it, dude. This is a good ass demo. So much respect. Everyone check it out. It's on Fortress Records. The band is Dead on Your Feet. It is their self-titled demo. All right, let's go on and talk the band Who Remembers. They are out of New Jersey. They put out their hardcore demo cassette on Rebirth Records. Dude, this rules so hard. It's 6 short, high-energy songs. It's not a perfect recording. It's not perfect playing on here, but there's no bullshit studio effects. They vary their fast beats. Sometimes it's a scissor beat. Sometimes it's regular double time. The singer has a ton of charisma. The lyrics are pretty good and witty, you know, for a younger band like that. Get off my ass, you little fucking rat, like stuff like that. Hey, that's a good ass rhyme, dude. Rhyme ass with rat. Hell yeah. If all new bands like tried to sound like this instead of like shitty beatdown, like the world would literally be a better place. And I've listened to this demo a lot and it's so sick. Like the songs are all short. They're all pretty memorable. And like, I don't think this is going to end up being the demo of the year, of course, but like maybe it should be, because like this is exactly what I want in a hardcore demo. Like if there's a new band and they're like, you know, let's say 15 to 20-year-olds, like this is exactly what I wanted to sound like. And so like maybe in that way, like this will be like one of my favorite hardcore demos of the year. I absolutely love this thing. What do you think, Kev?
Yeah, this demo is awesome. It's all like 17-year-olds from New Jersey, and the lyrics come off like that, but I mean that positively. Like, they're songs about getting sick and having to take cold medicine all the time. There's songs about hating Cybertrucks and wanting to crush them up in your bare fists. Like, it's awesome. It's like you said, I think the most important thing new bands need is a good vocalist who kind of just goes for it with whatever the music is, right? Like so many times, how many times do you hear a new vocalist and they're so rigid? There's no realness to it, right? It's just like you could tell they are very calculated of like, this is exactly how I have to deliver this line right now, right? And I think both this and the Dead on Your Feet is both vocalists just kind of going for it completely and not doing that, and just kind of like however it sounds is however it sounds. And especially on this, you can tell a lot was put into the vocal cadence and like the little flares that he was going to do to kind of spice it up. And I think that all really works to a really good demo. And both these bands, their first real show was like 2 weeks ago, and they played back to back, and both were really good. So especially Who Remembers, they were awesome. It was just like a lot of young kids just all going crazy. So yeah, this is exactly what I want for new hardcore bands, just especially kids that are pretty young in other bands and they just do a band like this. And like, yeah, we're just going to go for it and write about what we want to know or what we know, and pretty clever, and it's good.
Yeah, there was that band, The Snobs, like back in the early 2000s. And like we played with them in 2001 in Austin, and like they were like children then, you know, and like the next year they played Pausey Numbers, and like they were like legit teenagers, you know, so like that 1 year made a lot of a difference. But like when they were like a little kid band, like they were like, yeah, this song's about killing rats, and it's like, okay, that's like something like, you know, 13-year-olds should sing about. You know what I mean? Like I don't want your take on geopolitics. Right. You know what I mean? So like, you know, just write about shit you care about, have it be sincere, and like kick ass, dude. And like that's a sick ass band. And Who Remembers? Like, I don't think that if you love hardcore and you listen to this demo, like how could you walk away from this not being like, all right, Who Remembers? That is a band that kicks ass. You know what I mean?
fight lasts for hours, each ram battering the other dozens of times.
Head to head.
All right, we are going head to head with two Pennsylvania hardcore records from the mid to late 90s. Rain on the Parade, the Body Bag 7-inch, Contention Records #1, came out in 1996. It is going up against the Rancor Flip the Switch 7-inch, Young Blood Records #1, came out in 1997. Kevin, as a Pennsylvanian, how are these bands looked at today?
So, especially there's a period of time like 10 or 15 years ago where, right around the time of Stick Together, like we were talking about, where these bands kind of had a real resurgence, especially like, Rancor, Atari, Rain on the Parade, like all these bands had a bit of a resurgence where they kind of went from being obscure to being like, I don't want to say celebrated by everybody, but they were kind of celebrated by like at least a group of people, right? A niche of people. And they were kind of like Rancor lyrics. To be honest, I never really got as into these bands, but like when I was listening to it, I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard people quote that around me like hundreds of times, So it's kind of its own thing. And even recently, I know people have repressed Rancor shirts, and like I've seen people wearing, like younger kids wearing them around shows now. So I won't tell you that they're like these big legendary local bands, but at the same time, people definitely put respect on them, and people like think of that it's, they're cool that they existed, especially in the area, like a group of bands like this kind of all at the same time doing their own thing. I say this in a very complimentary way, but I think there's really something to having like the B and C tier hardcore bands where maybe they're not like the best of their style or whatever, but there's this real sincerity to bands like that. And when you find them that you like, it's kind of a real special thing that kind of only exists in hardcore. It doesn't really exist in type of other music. And I think that both of these bands really fit right in there.
Both these bands were like, of an era where you're buying a $3 7-inch and like, half of them are good. And like both of these were really good and memorable, like, I think there's a lot of memorable songs on both of these records. Like, first of all, the Rain on the Parade, Body Bag and Resolution are like amazing songs. Like those two songs stand above everything else on these two records, I think. But like Rancor is so catchy too. The first song, Peace of Mind, great ass song. And then of course the last song, I Won't Take Part, so good. And a lot of times like re-recording your own songs, like your band's songs a second time, if you're a hardcore band, is a really bad idea. We've seen that idea whiff many times through the history of hardcore. But this song, I Won't Take Part, is on the Rancor demo, and this version on the 7-inch is like 20 times better. It's a little faster on the breakdown, and it just works so well. And then it's got that line, dude, which I'm sure is the one you're talking about. Tougher than a Tonka truck. You can't run because you're out of luck. So good. and then one of these songs, I didn't take notes. All my notes for this section got wiped out. So I'm going off the dome here. But like one of those Rancor songs, like the mid-tempo one, like so you think a hardcore show is a place for a fight. Leave the attitude at home and let the kids ignite. There's a time and a place, but it sure isn't here. When you go into a show, there should be nothing to fear. Stop the fighting. It's like, dude, I hadn't listened to that song in like a long time. And when I listened to like these songs, like in preparation for this, like I knew every word. Like that's insane. You know what I mean? So like, both these bands knew how to write hooks. I love that last song on the Rain on the Parade 7-inch, the On My Mind. It's on your mind. You won't say it. How fucking weak. And then that next line is like, you're fucking meek. Like, I would not want Ronnie Little calling me meek in 1997. Like, that would feel terrible. You know what I mean? But I love both these 7-inches. It's hard to choose one, but dude, I can't go against Body Bag. Like, that fucking riff is so good. Send it back to the long hairs, dude. I'm taking Body Bag. What are you taking?
So I really do like how on all of this, the lyrics are so specific about like scene stuff and like, you know, talking about spending $30 on a show, which is so funny now where
Yeah.
$30 is like the normal. But I did really like that, you know, it feels kind of dated, but also really relevant at the same time. Like the scene stuff is always going to be around, even if it's like now that I'm a little older, it's less important to have songs about that. But the fact that they exist, I really like. I feel like the songs on the Rain on the Parade record are a little bit more memorable. Like also Three Chords, where they're talking about spending $30 on the show. Like, you know, you'll come away thinking about that line afterwards, right? So I feel like the songs are more memorable on the Rain on the Parade, but that Rancor is a little faster and a little bit more of like, you know, jump up and down stage dive type of stuff. And the line that I was referring to specifically was the I won't take part line of just the X on my hand, you know, won't take part, X on my
X
hand.
on my hand will stay inside my heart. It's X on my hand, me, I won't take part. X on my hand will stay inside my heart. So good.
Yeah, I've heard that hundreds and hundreds of times in my life. So I feel like I was really in between which one to choose, but I think I'm going to go with Rancor just because I would probably, you know, if they existed now, I probably would be more into seeing Rancor and being into the whole vibe. But both bands are awesome, and here I am, very too old to be diving into both of them, considering I should have a long time ago, but I was glad I finally did.
Dude, hell yeah. And also, shout out to the song Three Chords that has 4 chords. So that's what's up. Hey, and the last thing I want to say is there's a video. It's on YouTube now, but check out like Rain on the Parade and Rancor. They both play a show at a place called The Gate in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania on August 24th, 1997. It's like a floor show and it's super packed and it is fucking sick. So like if you want to watch these bands in their prime and like see like one night when they were on top of the world, like check that out.
I'm taking it back to the old school because I'm an old fool.
I'm taking it back to the old school because I'm an old fool.
Yo, what's up, motherfuckers? Old school.
All right, we are going old school, and this is the most new school, old school thing we've done. We are in the 90s. We're going to talk an LP from 1991. We are talking the band Disaster, their LP called War Cry. It came out on Tone Deaf Records, but it has been recently re-released by La Vida es un Mus, and that re-release is sick. There's a fat-ass booklet. It's very nice, so check that out. Kevin, had you heard this record before, and what are your general thoughts about it?
No, so a few weeks ago, I was going through a Sorry State order, and you know, they got $75 free shipping. So of course I have to hit that. So I hit up Zach and I said, Zach, what should I get? And you sent me this, so I was like, all right, I'll buy that, no problem. And then you're like, yeah, we're going to talk about it next episode. So I hadn't heard it before at all, and when I listened to it, it's awesome. I mean, so the thing with a lot of these D-beat records, you know, from the 80s and 90s is that they're a vibe, right? Like a band like Disclose. I'm not putting on Disclose to listen to specific songs. I'm putting it on because for the next 15, 20 minutes, I want to blast my headphones as loud as I possibly can and just kind of zone out and feel crazy, right? And so that's exactly what I feel from listening to this record as well. And the thing that that really stands out to me more than any song specifically is how it feels like it's going to fall apart at any second. Like you hear guitars cutting in and out sometimes. He gets off time sometimes. Like the whole thing could easily the songs could just end and blow up at any second. And I think that is a real feature of this type of stuff where like, I don't want a D-beat record to sound too clean and too sterile, right? Like I want it to sound huge and big and noisy, which this one does. I think the production really does stand out on it, where all the guitars sound really crunchy and fuzzed out, but also clean, right? You can hear everything that they're doing, but I don't want it to be sterile. So I think that this really does capture all of that, and it's really it's awesome. Like I said, it's the type of stuff where you just put on headphones and just blast it, and that's exactly what I want from this.
Yeah, I definitely think that Disclose is more of a vibe just because like their tones are insane.
Right.
This thing just sounds perfect to me. Like when I want to listen to a D-Beat record that's not Discharged, like I want to hear something that's like super monotone and like just basically sounds like Discharge, and this does. Like it sounds like they have a single influence and is Discharge Y. You know what I mean? And like they're just going for it. And it just sounds so big and so monotone, but Kevin's right. Like there are parts where it feels like it's going to fall apart. Like especially on like the last song, the singer gets like a little off time, but it is so good. Like he gets a little off time on throughout the record, but like that one is like really like noticeable because he's doing 1 million words a minute, but it sounds so sick, dude. It's like controlled chaos. You know what I mean? I'm going to keep harping on it. This record just sounds so good, and like, I think that there aren't highs or lows on it. It's monotone in that way. And that's what I want. And like, sometimes like, for other styles of records, like I want to put on something monotone. Like I think about putting on Hatebreed Satisfaction as the Death of Desire or Marauder Master Killer. Like these are records that just sound so good all the way through, and you can put them on, you play them loud and they just sound great. And like, it sounds weird to compare this to those, but it is like that for me. Like the production is that good. It sounds so good loud. And it's like, they're not taking you on a journey. It's just like everything's up to 10 the whole way through. I love like that they tuck in some environmental lyrics too. Like on that song Progress, like the progress, oil spill, progress, nuclear accident, progress, a bigger bomb. So sick, dude. The song Salvation about animal testing. And then there's a line later in the record, the animals of the world being hunted to extinction. I love that shit, dude. Because sometimes people talk about like, oh, like punk is about destroy and hardcore is about creation. And that's stupid because like the punk umbrella is so big. Like there's a lot of like punk stuff that is about like creating and also about like preserving and so forth. So like, I don't know. I love this thing. It's 10 songs. All of them kick ass. There's only one over 2 minutes. And yeah, it's just for a D-Beat record. This and that first Meanwhile record are like my two favorite of like the Discharge clones. Maybe that Discard 7-inch, but yeah, I don't know. I just love this thing. Any final thoughts, Kev?
I was just going to say that Progress was also the song that stood out to me. And also two things. So first, I think that the lyrics, harping on those, is a really good point because a band like this should exactly have lyrics like that. Like they should be about something about, like you said, the environment. Obviously, most songs bands like this do are going to be about war, but that's always relevant. And then, comparing it to the Massacred record, it's kind of the same where a lot of those lyrics are about the same stuff, but also it's interesting to compare where we were saying that the feature of the Massacred record was that they went for it as an LP and they kind of switched it up a little bit and they switched up the tempos. And then, but here it's the opposite where they just kind of go for it the whole time, right? Like there's no letting up and there's no tempo change and it's still a really good record all the way through too. So, it's not to say one philosophy is better than the other. Both times they can both really rip and pay off.
Yeah, I think that like Disaster is going for a thing. Like, and that's the difference, right? Like the Massacred is they're like carving out their own space in punk. And like Disaster is like, this record is basically a tribute record. You know what I mean? So like that would be the difference. Although it is kind of insane because one of the greatest things about Discharge is the mid-tempo banger. And like Disaster just decide like, well, we can't do one like half as good as that. So like, we're just not going to try. We're just going to rip on every track,
Right. And I do also find the lyrics or the vocals, to be a little bit more sneering than Discharge, which I think is actually good. It kind of makes it stand out too, because like, if the vocals were too yelling exactly like Discharge, then it would be too much like a Discharge rip, right? Where it's like, why would I listen to this if I could just put on Hear Nothing, right? But like in this case, it's just unique enough where it's like, okay, this is not exactly Discharge. There's kind of its own merit here. And even though, it's a D-Beat band, it's going to sound like Discharge.
right, we're going to do a UFO, and Kev chose this one. We are going to replace Scott Vogel on The Death of Your Perfect World. That LP came out in 1999 on Victory Records. So the day before they went to record vocals for this, Scott Vogel was abducted by a UFO. Now we got to scramble to find someone to put into that studio and lay down the vocals on this record. Dude, this is one where we're not going to find someone better suited for this record. So it's someone that's going to be not as good. What are you thinking here, Kev?
So I'm going over this in my head, and I'm trying to think. So a really obvious one would be the singer of Turmoil, because the vocals are really similar. But, trying to go a little different. And then I'm thinking, I do love the Eddie Leeway demo. So would something like that, just completely out of left field, be interesting? So I'm trying to think in my head, and we just came up with this idea too. So there's no prep. So we're thinking on the fly. So I'm trying to think here, and let's see.
Dude, this was a no-brainer. This was a no-brainer, dude. It's 1999. Who's in their prime? Who's on a 5-year tour for Satisfaction is the Death of Desire?
Okay,
that's
like that too.
This is like the shortest UFO ever. Like, dude, we're putting in 1999 Jamie Hatebreed. Hey, I think Vogel is going to be a better vocalist on this. Vogel's voice has a little more personality than Jamie's, but if we got to sub someone in for Vogel, dude, a 1990s Jamie Hatebreed, let's do it.
True.
Yeah,
that's a good one. I was trying to think, maybe Dwid or somebody from Cleveland too, like maybe the Human Furnace.
Ooh.
Because that would be, completely different, but like he would own it, right? It's still heavy. Something would happen. So let's say that. Let's say Human Furnace for me. If we're not going Josta, I was thinking Josta was too on the nose, even though it's the perfect one.
Yeah. And you can hear them duel because Human Furnace is on a song on Lowest of the Low. So you can hear Vogel and Human Furnace back to back. So,
and you can hear Vogel and Josta on this record too.
That's true. So, hey, back to back on both of them. What's up?
It's your time!
All right, it is your choice, and it was Kev's choice this time around. We are going to talk the LP, Are These Our Lives, by the band Trial. It came out in 1999 on Equal Vision Records. What's your thoughts on this one, Kevin? Why did you want to talk it?
So first, should I say why I was listening to this a lot, or are we going to save that?
Yeah, because we're redoing the 90s list.
Yeah, so we're redoing the 90s list, so I've been going unbelievably hard about like just kind of re-listening to a lot of stuff. Some stuff that I like a lot, some stuff that I haven't listened to in a while, whatever. And so I listened to Are These Our Lives, which, is a record that I've listened to for 20 years and I've liked, but I've definitely gone like year stretches without listening to it. And so I revisited it this time. And for whatever reason, this time when I listened to it, I was just kind of like mind blown by it a bit. Like it finally connected on kind of like a higher level for me than other times when I've ever listened. And so that's why you asked me what I wanted to talk about. And I was like, well, I've been listening to the Trial record quite a bit recently, and it's kind of makes sense to me in a way it never did before. So that was for sure the reason why I wanted to bring it up, because it's always, I don't want to say that I felt like I didn't understand it, because that's not true. But like I said, there's just some things that you kind of connect with on more of like a, oh, that's cool level. Like you connect to it like, oh, this is great. And this is kind of the first time that's ever really happened with me on this one.
Kev, do you think that this is like the definitive end of the 90s record? Like, so it comes out in 1999 and it seems like it's completely unaffected by Satisfaction as the Death of Desire, because like I feel like there's a before and an after Hatebreed Satisfaction, like where all bands lean into the breakdown after that. Before, you have like 90s bands that people would like mosh to and stuff, but think about Earth Crisis, like they're not having traditional breakdowns. Even a band like Strife, like they do these like heavy breakdown parts where they do like a slower tempo and stuff, and like that's kind of what this is still. Like there aren't many straight like, all right, here's the fast part, here's the mosh part, out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that is a good call, but also it's interesting because like, you know, a lot of the mosh parts on it and like the heavy breakdowns, which isn't every song, but a lot like the big ones that stand out are very big, and like the song is focused around them, and they are definitive hard breakdown parts. So that also makes sense. Like, you know, like, so it's kind of, you know, it kind of does feel like maybe they took that aspect of it. Also the idea of the way, and then, you know, just kind of comparing to Satisfaction. The other thing that I kind of see that's similar is the way that the fast parts are like, they're very, there's a lot of lyrics all packed in. Like it kind of, it's very driving for those parts. It's not, there's not a lot of room to breathe, which I think that, you know, that's a similarity. But then otherwise, the kind of the way that it sounds and everything.
I think that that's a Greg thing though, because he's doing that on the 7 inches. He's very verbose.
Right. But I don't even mean like the content of the lyrics. I just kind of mean the way that they're like coming at you all the time, you know?
I always thought their signature song was that "This Is Not a Trend," the straight edge song. And like, dude, the lyrics on those verses is like, God damn, this guy doesn't stop. And then also like even the gang vocals on it are like, like it's not like a traditional gang vocal where it'd be like, it's like
yeah. But yeah, I mean, otherwise though, like what you mean, kind of the big like 90s hardcore sound, I would think that it's probably this. It's either this or like Death to Your Perfect World, because that's like 99, right? So that's it's kind of one of those two things, but like I think that it's both. I think that that's it. And then like Peace and Security is kind of like the next stage.
Yeah. But Death to Your Perfect World definitely lives in the post Hatebreed, and Death Threat, of course, does. I mean, when they started, they were like 3 members of Hatebreed.
Right.
So, yeah. The other thing I think about this, like, I think that you're leaning more towards like this is a masterpiece, but like when I listen to this, I'm like, is this a masterpiece or is this like a completely overindulgent turd? Is this so high on its own supply? Like this is like a Shape of Punk to come. I mean, thankfully they didn't call this like the Shape of Hardcore to come or something. You know, I mean, I do think that. And then also I think like, am I only being judgmental about this because like it's an American band like playing in like the straightforward hardcore lane? Like if this was like a record that came out of Japan and like there was an ex-member of Gauze or something in it, would we all be like, ooh, wow, masterpiece? You know what I mean? Like,
so I do agree with you that it's overindulgent, but this time when I listen to it, the overindulgence works. Like the theatrics of it all work. I like how the intro ties everything together. Like that's one of the things I've been thinking about that kind of made me like go more is just like what is that? How did they do it? How did they think to do it? Did they steal it from somewhere? Did they compose it themselves? Did they just have somebody else come in and do it? Like, and this time I like it. I don't think it always works whenever every band does stuff like this. For example, do you like No More Dreams of Happy Endings by Damnation AD?
No.
So in the middle of it, there's a 10-minute long funeral march, which is like grinds the record to a halt. Like I love the record, but it just grinds it, right? So in this case, I don't really feel that. Like I feel like this all works. But I definitely, you know, I can understand. But when I'm looking at it this time, I'm just kind of thinking like they put a lot into this to kind of tie the whole thing together sonically. Like they kind of come back to some of the same things sometimes, and I think that that's cool. I like how like the song "Are These Our Lives" kind of ties into the intro and kind of all comes back together. And I think it's kind of insane actually that they put another song after it, because they should have just ended the record with that song, because like it kind of is the peak, I think, of the theme of it. So I understand the overindulgence, but this time all that works for me.
Yeah, and to explain it to people, like obviously there's a playlist for every episode, 185milessouth.com. Click that playlist link or find us on Spotify. But this record starts out with like a minute 40 of like acoustic guitar and violin, which like whatever, it's the intro. And then it kicks into Reflections, which is great, like with that closed hi-hat sizzle. Like it does sound really iconic. And then the dynamics on the cymbals into that double kick mosh, like it's so sick. And when it kicks fast, I like Greg's voice a lot. I think that some people can fall one way or the other on it, but like I do really enjoy it. And yeah, so like that's epic, but then like it gets followed up with like a 4-minute song and it's just like, like here we go, dude. You know, I think that they're at their best, like when they're rocking the dynamics, like, you know, the cymbal chokes at the beginning of In the Balance, you know, but like, and there's some very like 90s stuff on here. Like I was talking like on the One Step Away, like that's the mid-tempo banger. Like there's that quiet talking part, you know, and then it kicks heavy. And then, you know, Kev was talking about like the big mosh parts. I think that there's just big parts in here. I don't know if they're necessarily like the mosh parts, because like one of the most dynamic parts of the record is like that breakdown part on When There's Nothing Left, when the bass guitar and the double kick are going. Like that's a sick ass section. You know, after that, like we go to the interlude and it's like they're doing the acoustic guitar and violin again, and it's like like we're back, dude. And then the whole record ends with like another 9 minutes of that shit, dude. It's like, what the fuck is going on here?
I do like that that's at the end though, because you can decide if you want to ride it, you can ride it. If you don't feel like riding it, you can just turn it off. Like to compare to the Damnation, obviously you can skip it, but like you got 10 minutes in the middle, where this time it's like 10 minutes at the end. Okay.
Yes, it could have been worse. Like I could have bought this on vinyl and like they had that 9-minute violin song as like the third track, but I would have like sold this thing to Roadside Records or just snapped it over my knee. You know what I mean? The last thing I want to say is I texted Kev. I was like 8 songs into this. I went somewhere the other day and I was listening to this and I was like, dude, I'm pretty sure there's a song with like a Sig Heil like intro, because like it's something I remember about this record. I haven't listened to this record in over 20 years. I hadn't gotten there yet. I was on track 8. He's like, I think it's track 9 or whatever. And sure enough, it's track 9, the song Legacy. There's this whole intro of like Nazis doing the Sig Heil. And of course, like they're an anti-Nazi band and shit. But like, dude, that's one of your moments, like especially me as like a bald dude, like that's some Office Space shit, you know, like when Michael Bolton is rapping Scarface No Tears and he's got to roll the window up. Like I ain't trying to be rolling down the street bumping Legacy by Trial and it's like fucking a bunch of Nazis Sig Heiling. You know what I mean? What the fuck?
True. But I will say though, with that part specifically, especially the thing about this record that kind of everybody knows and I think is real divisive is the lyrics, right? Because they're very verbose, they're very like specific. And I know some of my friends talk about it, and I was talking about this record the other day because I knew I'd get a rise out of them, and they were like, "I hate that record because it's the thesaurus core, like it's awful." But this time when I'm looking at the lyrics, especially with like everything that's going on right now, I think that that's another reason why I connect, because like so many of the lyrics are kind of timeless and like very specific, you know, 20 years ago, but also with what's going on now too. So the Legacy song, you know, the Sig Heil part is a little goofy, of course, especially like you don't want to be rolling down with that with your windows open at this point, but like it also is kind of like chilling, and just when you look at the lyrics, and it's basically just like kind of talking about what's happening now, where it's like, you know what, like I'll accept all that because I kind of think that it drives the point home and it kind of makes it more clear of like, oh yeah, this, you know, it's very easy, because the lyric is like, with empty minds and vacant scares, our lifeless generation is drawn towards the illusions of endless offered bait, the same selective vision. And it's like, okay, that's exactly what's going on right now. So
yeah. That's all true. And I think he's a good lyricist and all that. I just think that, do we need another thing on this record? You know, I mean, like, we got 3 violin songs and now we got like this whole big intro, you know, and like I get your friends like thinking that it's like verbose and specific, and maybe that's why I'm a little more critical of it, right? Like I think all the time about like all the French oi bands that we love, the Freud bands, you know, we love them, but we don't know the lyrics, like, and that's part of it, right? We just assume they have good lyrics and like they're heartfelt, but like, what if we found out that fucking, you know, Syndrome 81 was just singing about eating hamburgers and farting, dude? You know, like that would be fucking terrible. You know what I mean? Like, what if we found out like Reeks is all just like about fucking barbecuing? You know what I mean? It's like this changes everything, dude. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I do think that we're judging this a little bit because like I am judging this a little bit because I know like the singer is like a juggling comedian, you know, like compared to like some like psychopath, like you know, a warrior poet or something.
Right.
So I don't know.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, like I get all that, but also I think there's something too where it feels like they put so much into this that they just kind of like flamed out right away, which, you know, you can say if that's a good or a bad thing, but it's kind of respectable where it's like this was kind of their magnum opus, right? And then like they just broke up immediately afterwards because it was just like, yeah, we did this, and now it's over.
Yeah, it's true. So I saw him on this tour. We drove down to San Diego and saw him play the Empire Club in the North Park neighborhood. And it was great. You know, back then, like hardcore bands weren't plugging in like some sort of like intro through the PA. And like they put on like that minute 40 of like acoustic guitar and violin. And then like, you know, when the first song Reflections hits, it was like, God damn, this is so sick. You know what I mean? And I'd seen Trial a couple times before. They were always like a great live band. I love that 7-inch with the This Is Not a Trend song on it. But yeah, they broke up right after, which is pretty wild. We should probably get one of the guys on at some point and ask them, because it is kind of like their final swan song. And you know, at least to them and some people, like this is a masterpiece, and they broke up right after it. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I've never seen them, but I've just seen the videos of Reflections and stuff, and it looks awesome. But all the reunions, either I didn't go to, or if like they only did a few East Coast ones, but I missed those when those come through. So never saw them. I know they're playing this summer too, so maybe I'll get the chance to see them at some point.
All right, I'm joined by Sergio Hernandez from Amenity. What's up, dude?
What's up, Zach? How you doing?
What is going on? All right, when do you get into punk and hardcore, and what was the first band or album that you really connected with?
Oh man, back in I would say '84, I was into metal at that time. Usually like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and I was a skater. I used to read Thrasher magazine. When I subscribed to Thrasher back in '84, they sent me a 7-inch. It was DRI's Violent Pacification. It was my first 7-inch I ever received, and I was just like hooked. After that, Couch Slouch, all those 1 minute long songs, and it just blew my mind. So from there, it was like obviously like the Misfits, Walk Among Us, Sex Pistols, the Clash, to like those were my like favorite bands early on. DOA, Youth Brigade. So yeah, and actually my first show was probably in '85. It was Youth Brigade, DOA, Upright Citizens, and the Asexuals. And again, that was just like this was like my calling. Like I love this style of music and the energy, and I was just hooked after that.
How old would you have been in '85?
15.
Okay,
so
sick.
14, my first record from that, and I grew up like always listening to music. My father was always passionate about music. My first record was the Kiss Destroyer when I was 7, and I would play that before like cartoons in the morning. So from there, it was like to new wave, to metal, and then eventually just to hardcore and punk.
Yeah, where was that show at? The one in '85?
It was in San Diego it was a roller skate rink. It was the Palisades roller skate rink. And I had to sneak out of the house, and I went with Baruch, who played drums in Amenity, and actually with Tim. And we went there. Baruch's father took us to go see the show, and it was just a magical experience. But yeah, and we ended up playing there. This was maybe 30 years ago, opening up for 7 Seconds and Bad Religion. So it's kind of fun being back at that, roller skate rink.
So much of like San Diego's 1980s reputation is like the violence, and it's interesting hearing you like go to a show in '85 like at a big roller rink and walking away like, oh, this is magical. Did that not like affect you at all?
Oh, it was brutal. It was a tough scene back then. There were just big dudes in mohawks and leather jackets, punching each other, and I was just like, oh my God, this is crazy. But we really loved Youth Brigade. That was like the band that we went to go see, and seeing them live, I think, was just like, again, life-changing experience for me, and I think for Baruch as well. And it was a very violent scene from that show. There was a lot of shows over at the Jackie Robinson YMCA, Wabash Hall, and you can count on like 4 or 5 fights a night. The San Diego skinheads were there. It was extremely violent. girls fighting girls. I had a friend who got his teeth knocked out at one show. Another friend punched in the head, knocked out. So it was just crazy. So it was a little scary at that time.
Do you have any other like early show memories like that? Like specifically of bands that like really blew you away?
Yeah, it's always kind of nice, even to this day, just seeing a band. I just when you think you've like heard it all, there's always some new band that comes by and just kind of like changes your perception of music and blows you away. But back in those days, I remember it was Soulside was one of them when they came. They played at Jackie Robinson YMCA, maybe like 88, 89. Another big band that we grew up loving was Scream. And we actually got to open up for Scream when Dave Grohl was playing drums. It was at that show, this was back in 80, 88 maybe. And then, before the internet, whatever, it was hard to connect scenes. We were in the San Diego Chula Vista scene. And at the end of the night, there was these two guys left standing there. One guy, they both had shaved heads, Air Jordans, X's on their hands and hoodies. And they came up to us, introduced themselves. One of them was Zach De La Rocha, and then Mark from Inside Out. So that's where we met Zach. We connected, and that was always kind of fun, like doing little mini tours with Inside Out up the coast, and just connecting with that Orange County kind of crew because of that one show. So that was memorable for me for sure.
Let's go back a little bit though. So what made you want to pick up an instrument and start like playing and participating instead of just being a spectator?
Oh, good question. Tim, Baruch and I were close friends growing up. I've known Baruch since I was 12, and I think Tim had bought a guitar. He'd been playing for maybe like 6 months, and he just mentioned, "Hey, let's, anyone want to start a band?" And I had never picked up an instrument before in my life, so I'm like, I'd love to play. And I've loved the bass. I've always loved the way the bass sounded. And I go, I'll play bass if that's okay. So I went down to the local music store, and I just bought like the cheapest bass I could find. It was like $50 or something at the time. Didn't know what it was. Didn't even know how to play. I remember the guy asked me, "Do you want to try it out?" I think I tried to play Suicidal Tendencies, song. I Saw Your Mommy or something. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it. It sounds great. And then we just started practicing, and I just, we went from there. Eventually played a show maybe about 8 months later.
What do you remember about that first show?
It was on Halloween at our friend's basement, actually. And I think it was Steve Stedham, the Skater Guys band that played with us too. And it was, we played like maybe 6, 7 songs, very, very rough. Obviously the first, stuff with Robin, our first singer. And it was the first band that actually, that was basically, from our friend group. So for all of our buddies being there, supporting, singing, dancing, whatever to it, it really made me feel like, oh, this is something special. And I hope we can continue this, this band for a long time.
And that would have been 1987.
87. Yep. 86 or 87. It may have been 86 on Halloween. And then in 87, we put out that first single on Vinyl Communications.
Yeah. Why did you not include that on the anthology that just came out?
We wanted to have it just the tracks that Mike was on. I love Robin, our first singer, but I think Amenity kind of found its place when Mike came into the band. I think we finally defined like who we were as a band, and I think that era just meant a lot to us. We toured together. We put out our most memorable songs, the songs that we felt most passionate about during that time period. So I think it really meant a lot to the four of us, and we wanted just to showcase that era of Amenity.
Do you remember the first time that Amenity played out of town?
The first time Amenity played at a town, I don't remember, but it was probably up in Orange County somewhere. Again, after we met up, it was really tough in those days to connect with other bands. You had to um, it's just not like this, not like it is how it is today. So I think after meeting with Zach, that was like the pivotal point where we started playing more shows out of town. Our first Orange County shows, and it may have been like at, you know, Spanky's or something in Riverside. Um, so that was probably the first time venturing out, but it was, we started kind of like not only playing shows out, but also going to shows out. We would start traveling to Fender's Ballroom in the 80s to see 7 Seconds, or going to the Roxy, or, venues up in LA where more bands would frequent. But with Amenity, probably during the OC days with like the Inside Out, um, uh, 108, No for an Answer, Reason to Believe, like those kind of bands that we would play a lot of shows with.
Since you brought it up, what are your memories of going to Fender's? It has such like a reputation.
Yeah, I've seen a few shows there. It just seemed like it was an iconic venue for the West Coast. Um, it was. I went to go see. We went to go see shows like straight edge bands basically play there. So it was a really good vibe. It's usually packed with kids. It almost was like a family reunion, because a lot of those bands that we would play with, Chain of Strength, whatever, we'd all hang out, and that was like just like go get dinner after the show. But it almost felt like uh, being at home, but just in a different city, just kind of having that that magic in LA basically. So.
Can you talk about forming a bond with some of the Seattle people and going up there the first time?
Yeah. So in Seattle, the straight edge scene was so small back in the 80s. There were just a handful of bands that it seemed like, and every band wanted to like meet that other band, to have that connection in San Diego. So when we'd invite them to play San Diego, they'd invite us to play in their own, hometown as well. So I forgot how we met Greg Anderson and the Brotherhood guys, but we seemed to connect. We played some shows up in LA. I'm sorry, LA, but in Seattle. And then after, I think maybe our second time there, we somehow convinced Greg to like just pack up his stuff and move to San Diego with us and join Amenity. So that was a wild time. I think Greg was here for maybe about a year. He started Statement at that time too, and for some reason it ended up not working out with Amenity. But I love that guy, and I'll never forget the time that he was in the band with us.
Can you compare the two scenes? Like, what was Seattle like at that time compared to what San Diego was like?
Very similar. It's funny. It's just like just these young kids that were like, a lot of the straight edge kids were all very like just passionate about the music. We all knew about the same bands. We all had like these certain ideals, and it was almost like finding, we met some really great people, and people that we still talk with today because of hardcore. It seems like it's just like that brotherhood, that kinship that you've had, like these certain, you bond through music, but also through maybe certain ideals as well. So it was very magical. Zach, it's like, how it is today, the hardcore scene. I feel very fortunate to be able to have had that, those moments in my life, and, and meet these people that I'm still really good friends with today. So.
How do you think the San Diego scene changed like between 85 and 89 when you really start rolling with Amenity?
I think San Diego scene was, okay, it's funny. We would go to a lot of the San Diego shows, as far as like at the Jackie Robinson YMCA. And again, it was just extremely just violent. I actually wrote a little letter into our local, like it was called the Daily Impulse, like a San Diego anarchist kind of little rag, I guess. And I was kind of like venting like how violent the San Diego scene was. And we kind of said, we don't fit in with that genre, that those people, and like let's start our own kind of like, let's have our own shows. We'll play in our friend's garage. We did a lot of backyard shows, so we started just building a scene up in Chula Vista. A lot of the shows were like in our Del Mar's garage. We had like, Judge play there, Bold, Reason to Believe. Um, and it would just became like this thing like, oh, you're from Chula Vista, we had our own little unique kind of, you know, magical scene there. It was pretty amazing. You said how different it was. So going from those violent shows to something that felt a little more positive, a little more, you know, we bonded a lot more, uh, really changed the whole scene. And during that late 80s part in San Diego, there were a lot of great bands that had a lot of unique styles. There was like, Daddy Longlegs. There was a ska band called Gangbusters. And, before Rocket from the Crypt, or there was Drive Like Jehu, Pitchfork, Funeral March. So we would there. Everyone was had such different styles, and we'd put on bills with 4 or 5 different bands that were just like a funk band to Crash Worship, this crazy like industrial kind of tribal band. And I always felt like San Diego is so magical because we had so much diversity in music. Like you can always go to a show and bet that you're going to see something that just you weren't expecting. So
What was it like, Judge playing in a garage in Chula Vista? What were the guys like at that time?
oh man, it was. I don't think we would call it was my friend Del Mar's garage, and we would just call the club like Club Del Mar, or so I don't know if they even knew it was going to be a garage when they rolled up there. I think a lot of the guys were just like surprised, like, what the hell is this? Like, where are we?
Yeah.
Down by the border, almost near TJ, and then you are playing in some like garage and stage diving off the washer. It was it was great, magic. We packed the place. And I think all those bands were just like, uh, you know, shocked in how well the Chula Vista scene was. Actually, I took a post. I think Bobby Sullivan from Soulside posted something. Like somebody posted a picture of them playing in the garage, and he said something like, "Yeah, that was like one of our most memorable shows on the tour." So it was really, really, really cool because it really was a special place. I booked a tour for Amenity back in 1990, and again, it was like getting a contact list from so and so and so and so, pulling out a map and just start calling and just trying to map out where you would go. And, it was just basically playing in basements and in garages. We did like a whole tour. I don't think we really played any like real venues, maybe a couple, but mainly they were like in like Tony Bromo in Chicago, like in his basement, or in Seattle, like somebody's, garage or something. So it was very DIY and just a special time, I guess.
Did Amenity ever play Tijuana?
Yeah, we did. Oh man, Tijuana was crazy at that time too. We played at some wrestling arena, and it was like this 5 foot high, like wrestling stage mat or whatever. And we played with a bunch of like Tijuana punk bands, Amici de la Tierra. I think Neighborhood Watch played. There was like maybe 10 bands, and it was just crazy. These guys were like super, like, I don't say violent, but it was just a whole different a level of excitement, I guess. But it was fun. It was cool.
Do you have any memories of going to Iguanas?
Oh yeah, dude! I used to go to Iguanas all the time. Saw Bad Brains there. Again, I love metal growing up, and one of my favorite bands was Merciful Fate. So I saw King Diamond there. I dragged Oscar from Impel and Hingata down there with me to see King Diamond. But that was great. Who else played there? I used to see just like random bands like well, Gangbusters played there. What's the band? Anyways, it was so close to go, and it was a lot of fun going down to Iguanas.
How about that band from Tijuana, the Solucion Mortal? Did they come over and play a lot? And what were your memories of them?
Yeah, I think we played a couple. It was Solución Mortal. Tijuana No was another one, which I think they still play around. God, we only played a handful of shows. I think they were more like punk versus, like the straight edge hardcore stuff.
Right.
I think we played maybe one show together, maybe two at the most. But it was cool. It was cool, like meeting the punks from TJ and seeing that there was a thriving scene in Tijuana. Again, it's like coming from a small town like in Chula Vista. We're kind of it was a hard time to kind of get out. And when you're 17 years old and meeting kids from like other parts of the world that know the same music as you do, listen to the same records, have heard this band. It was really, really cool. Maybe, yeah, music's so accessible nowadays. You can find anything now, but back then it was rough. And it's fun going to a show, buying a record, going to a record store, digging and trying to find that record you've always wanted. So, and it's just cool being connect with kids that shared, your similar kind of, taste in music.
How would you explain how the Amenity sound like progressed over the years?
Well, I think Tim, we all kind of have like, a little bit of a metal background. And I think there was Amenity was kind of a unique band. It didn't sound like the typical straight edge bands at the time. It didn't have that typical, 4/4 fast part, kick into a mosh part, kick into 4/4. It was a little different. We were highly influenced by the Bad Brains. Tim loved the Bad Brain. We all did, and so I think a lot of his guitar riffs were kind of like influenced by that. Definitely early like speed metal, Metallica. I back in those days, I had dreadlocks. I liked all sorts of style of music, from like old funk to reggae to to punk, hardcore, whatever. So Amenity had like a different feel, and I think when Mike came in the band, he changed it a little bit too, adding his own style to it. He wrote pretty much Repercussion, Shine, some of the newer stuff as well. So it was really nice having his kind of input in as well.
Why does Amenity break up, and what are your memories of the last show?
I think Mike wanted to do Force Down, I think, more, take Force Down a little more serious, I think. And I think for us, it was getting to the point too where I think we all kind of wanted to do something new. So it was like a bittersweet moment where, it's always hard to break up, hard to let go of something that you put so many years into. So the last show was pretty emotional. A lot of our friends were there, maybe, I don't know, 300-400 people. And it was really emotional. And the last song we did, Our Struggle, we invited a guy, Daryl Blunt, to do like a little like hip hop thing at the end, like a little remix. And he killed it. After we broke up, I think Barry and Tim and I were like, hey, like, do you still want to do something together? And we all said, yeah, I don't think we're finished. So we were like, well, what about with Daryl singing? So we started House of Suffering and did that for a few years. And, we with Daryl, the first singer, then Caton DePena from Hyrax, and then the last singer, this guy named Steve. So
Where was that last Amenity show at? It looked huge, the stage.
it was at San Diego State University. I forget the name of the theater or whatever, but it was a pretty big theater. And it was cool. It was different because it was, it was a huge stage. It was like staff pro, whatever. So it wasn't like, in retrospect, it would have been kind of nice to have done it like at the Che Cafe or something, that we could all been like right there with each other. So it was a little awkward, like being on the stage, but nonetheless, I think everyone had a good time, and it was memorable for everyone that was there. And as far as, I think you can find it too if you YouTube it. You can definitely find the whole show. It's on there, so it's always fun to like go back and watch it.
What do you think the legacy of Amenity is, and what would you like it to be?
Well, I'd like to think the legacy is, almost being the first straight edge band from San Diego. I think it was really rough at the time because there really wasn't anything like Amenity, and even Chula Vista was kind of like just there really wasn't anything going on there. And I wouldn't say like a joke, but after high school, I used to work at a copy shop, like doing copy flyers for the band, basically. Tim brought in a business card that had the Amenity sun on there, the logo. We blew it up and made it our logo, and almost like a joke, like this is Chula Vista, but our little kind of scene. So it's kind of cool seeing like people even till this day getting tattoos of like the Chula Vista sun or having that Chula Vista, almost like a sense of pride. So the legacy, I think, like, hey, turning something that really was nothing there into something that was special and unique. And the fact that the other bands came from there, whether it be like Unbroken, Impel, Hingata, Take Offense, all these bands, these newer generation bands, POD, that will say, hey, we started because we used to go to Amenity shows, or we knew so and so. And for me, that's special. And so being the ones that started a certain scene or helped to start a scene, I think is Amenity's legacy. And it was, I hope to be known for that.
You brought up House of Suffering. This is a band that you do after. And you just brought up POD. How weird was it when POD just straight stole a House of Suffering song and put it on one?
Yeah, I remember they called us, or I think they were in the studio, and they called us saying, "Hey, is it cool if we do, Draw the Line?" And I was like, "Dude, that's awesome. That's I was really honored. They just got signed to Atlantic, and they were going to do this track, and we love those guys. You're like our little like brother band or whatever at the time." So we see the record comes out, and we look, and it's like all songs written and performed by POD. We're like, "Oh man, like what's up with this?" So so I was a little disappointed, but yet I was still like, I'm honored that they asked us and that they released this. I think, in a side note, I think Tim and Daryl ended up suing him. Barry and I didn't want any part of it. We declined to do anything because we just thought, it is what it is, whatever. We're just excited that the song is out there on this record. But yeah, that was a little of an awkward time. And that's funny. I just actually ran into Woov. We had dinner maybe a few years ago, actually, and we went out. And he actually brought that up, like, dude, Serge, like, what was up with that lawsuit? And I was like, dude, I had nothing to do with it. So, anyways, it was an awkward time, but I still love those guys. The Marcos all the time. Those guys are great.
But it's funny that he brings that up, like, what was up with the lawsuit? It's like, dude, what was up with straight jacking our song and not giving us any credit? Like, that's way bigger bullshit.
I did mention that too. It was just
the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Maybe they were young. I think they were told by their producer, like, screw it. This is fine. Just or something. But I'd like to think it wasn't malicious, and maybe they were just like pushed into something that they didn't have any idea what they were doing, because they were probably young kids at that time too when that record came out. But
Yeah, because it was several years later, and like they're out of press 7-inches. It probably didn't have very high runs. They probably just thought they could get away with it.
I think so. I think it was a scene where it's like, these guys aren't going to do anything. It was, just put it out and just say it what it is. But anyways, I love that era. I think House Suffering was a great band. And it was funny. I think it was that time in the 90s where, we thought, oh, we may get signed to a record label. We could see this kind of being a little more, I guess, commercial. And I remember getting a phone call from Zach De La Rocha, and we were talking about these new bands. I was telling him, oh, Zach, I'm doing this thing with this, new singer, this hardcore hip hop thing. And he was telling me, oh, dude, Serge, I'm doing the same thing. I'm doing this band with this amazing guitar player. We're doing like the hip hop hardcore thing too. The rest is history. Rage Against the Machine came out. They killed it. We ended up breaking up, and that was it, But those were good times in that early 90s.
Well, the first House of Suffering 7-inch is better than Rage, so let's go with that.
Dude, Daryl was amazing. Daryl was great. He had swag. He if he would have been in the band, no doubt I would have thought we would have done great things. And he was House of Suffering at the time. He killed it. But thank you so much for that.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, Sergio?
I just want to say that we just put out a record. It was our discography. That was a labor of love and a passion project that took over 3 years. Todd from Unbroken reached out to us maybe 3 years ago and says, "Hey, Mandel wants to put out this record. Are you guys into it?" At that time, it was like, okay, let's try to locate the reels, try to get those baked. I ran into Justin Pearson. He lives nearby. He told me, "Oh, go to this, producer, go to this engineer. He can bake them for you." We did that. They digitized well. We tweaked a few things up. We didn't want to change the whole feel, but just give it that energy that I think we wanted back 30 years ago, but didn't get. And came out on Indecision this year. So we're super proud of it. Aaron Edge did the layout. He graciously, donated his time, after Mike passed away last year. That was, a big bummer for all of us and a big shock. So this record dedicated to Mike, dedicated to all of our friends, all of our family that supported us throughout the years. And it really was a passion project for all of us. I think I almost teared up basically when I held it in my hands for the first time. So it was really, really special album.
Yeah, it came out great. He's referring to the record This Is Our Struggle Anthology 1989 to 2009. Came out this year on Indecision Records, indecisionrecords.com. Handle business, everyone. Get that. Thanks so much for your time, Sergio.
Zach, thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
All right, wrapping up. Final thoughts, Kev.
Enjoyed that interview a lot. Very informative. Packed a lot into it. Also, the Massacred LP, like I said, I think it's going to be one of the best of the year. So excited about that. Excited to really dive into the 90s project and then the other ones that we've been working on. And yeah, really excited about hardcore right now. There's new demos coming out, what feels like every single day, which almost feels overwhelming, but there's way worse problems to have. So I'm feeling good right now about hardcore 2025.
Yeah, we're going to redo the top 100 list, people. So if you want to get in and help and you think you have good opinions, you can email me 185milessouth@gmail.com. We got a bunch of lists last time that were very good. So we're probably going to include them. But if you want to get at us, you can. You might need to submit a sample and put it in front of us to see, do we respect this opinion or not? Because we might not. But, we're going to do everything because some of those lists are a little fucked up. I think that obviously my list was great and some of the other ones were a little off base. So what are you going to do? We're going to get more people in and then it'll be just a little more consensus. So because there's some whack shit, dude. Hatebreed way too low in the 90s. Negative Approach way too low in the 80s. That's fucking shameful, So we will see what happens. All right, Kev, where can people find you?
Check me out on Instagram, Not Fair to Flare. Check out Fall Salvation on Instagram. I think it's Fall Salvation HC, but just figure it out. Type it in.
That's right. Everyone get at me, 185milessouth@gmail.com. Also 185 Miles South on all of the social media stuff. And we're on Substack, 185 Miles South. If you want to read me, it's there. And we love you all. Hey, the Patreons keep this thing alive. So consider becoming a Patreon. It's patreon.com/185 Miles South. We love you all, and we'll talk to you again next Monday on Patreon.
Every creature's paid for, never ceases my salvation in the flow of no father's progress. Progress, old school, progress, the great state, progress, a bigger bomb. All my shit booked in the sea, going down all trees, also place we green up fate, no father's progress.